Bitcoin, blockchain, ICOs, Ethereum, and all the rest. Are cryptocurrencies the 21st century unicorn, a speculative bubble, or the future of money? The CryptoCast will help you understand the rise, the fall of digital currency, the highs, the highlights, the potential, and the lows, the scams, and pitfalls. I'm your host, Jason Hartman, and we'll talk with some of the biggest names in the space. CryptoCast is your resource for all things crypto. Let's go. Let's talk about Bitcoin a little bit. Yeah, you're a fan, right? Are you also a gold bug?
I don't know if I'd call myself a gold bug, but I am gold as well, and I advocate the ownership of gold and silver, frankly. Yeah.
So gold, silver, and Bitcoin, you like all three of those, right?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I mean, Bitcoin, is that in a bubble, or is that still good? I mean, it's gone up a lot, right?
It has gone up a lot.
It's a one-dimensional asset class. There's no income from Bitcoin. It's highly speculative. But what are your thoughts?
It is. It's in the early days. If it's still around, when the last Bitcoin is scheduled to be mined in 2140, if it's still around and still it's gained widespread adoption. And if this continues, the 300, I think the market cap of all the Bitcoin is like 320 billion now. I think all the gold in the world is somewhere around 10 trillion or so, 10 or 11 trillion, I want to say, these days. So if you just, if for some reason, I don't know what the reason would be, but if Bitcoin gets on par with gold, if the future sees more competition in the realm of stores of value, right? Gold is a store of value, silver is a store of value. Bitcoin is a store of value in its very earliest days. You could be looking back at 20,000 or whatever it is right now, 18 or 19,000 Bitcoin and saying, whoa, wow, I wish I'd loaded up back then. And will it be a volatile ride? Well, it's already been one. So the rational expectation is for that to continue. But at some point, this thing becomes money for a lot of people and a store of value for a lot more people. And the supply isn't going to go up at anything more than the prescribed rate. There's 18.5 million of them now. There won't be any more than 21 million, provided the protocols don't change or whatever, between now and 2140. We printed 3 trillion new US dollars this year alone. So, and 4 trillion during all those previous QEs. So, Bitcoin is the hardest currency on earth.
Well, okay, so let me pick at that one for a little bit. What do you think about the political or they're kind of the same, but regulatory risk? I mean, the governments around the world are in a race to come up with their own cryptocurrencies, their own digital currencies.
Right.
And those will be backed by standing armies, okay, and force of law. And they can just say, okay, you can't use Bitcoin, it's illegal. Or we're going to confiscate it like they did with gold in 33, and maybe they'll give you some money for it. Now, granted, this is a worldwide thing. It's not just a U.S. thing.
Right.
But, maybe they can say it's illegal to use Bitcoin, just like it's illegal to use drugs as a commodity. You can't trade in cocaine, right?
Okay.
That's illegal.
So has that law stopped people from trading cocaine?
No, it hasn't stopped them, but, it's vastly diminished. I mean, I would argue that if it were a legal commodity,
let me ask you this, Jason.
Traded a lot more.
You think the price of cocaine would be higher if it were legal or lower?
Well, that's an interesting question because it would be lower in the sense that there'd be more supply when you disrupt the crime syndicate's monopoly, which, by the way, is the same that already happened with marijuana. Okay, So we saw that happen with cannabis. The price dropped dramatically. I remember I visited a cannabis farm with one of my mastermind groups in Colorado shortly after it became legal there. And she said, people think we're making all this money. We're not. The price has dropped so much since it became legal. And, the same is true with human trafficking. If you want to take the profit out and ruin the industry for the crooks and the scumbags, make prostitution legal. And then you're going to disrupt their monopoly, right? If you want to have competition on Wall Street and you want to have a startup culture, you want to have competition in the banking industry, deregulate it. And then you'll have much more consumer choice and competition. Listen, I'm a libertarian, okay? So I agree with you there. But yes, the legality, in a sense, makes it more expensive when it's illegal. because producing it's illegal. But trading it, I don't know, it's kind of different, right? What do you think?
Well, let me ask you this. Can you, let's just think of it differently. I've seen this argument, people come at me with this all the time and they say, what if the government gets a hold of this? And I think that's the wrong framing. I think the framing is,
and you're talking about Bitcoin now.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Or sorry.
We're back to Bitcoin. That was where we started. That's really what I want to get to. The framing, to me, is not, what if the government makes it illegal or regulates it heavily? The framing to me is, this was created to be outside of that system, period. It is anonymous. It's effectively unhackable. And they're now wanting to compete. They are scrambling to try to compete with this. It's not like they're sitting around wringing their hands and they can't wait to get their hands on it and regulate it. They're scrambling to figure out how the hell they're going to disintermediate and compete. And they're not. That's why
you mean with like FedCoin or the Chinese digital currency. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that is what I mean. They're trying to figure out some way to compete with this. They're not going to make it go away. It was created to get around all that, because the original Bitcoin paper was like, boy, fiat currencies suck. Let's make a truly hard currency, and I'll be damned if they. I mean, it's early days. It's 11 years old, so let's not get too crazy. But so far, so very good. We got the PayPal deal, which is like 300 million plus customers, 26 million merchants. I mean, when this thing gets embedded into people's lives, they're not going to get rid of it.
PayPal doesn't have. There's no government competition. PayPal's not competing with the government, right? See, governments don't have to compete on merit. They just make a law.
Right.
And they ensure their monopoly, right? So
comes out of the barrel of a gun, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't worry. I think most folks worry about that government regulation angle on Bitcoin too much. I think Bitcoin it's gained momentum. It's gained, even at its tiny $320 billion market cap, compared to tens of trillions of dollars of the biggest reserve currency, US dollars, and euros and yen, the other two big ones. We get a little tiny piece of that. Bitcoin gets a little tiny piece of that.
Sure.
And it's going to be $1 million per Bitcoin, just like that. It's going to be, it could wind up being like a multi-hundred bagger over time. And a 50 bagger or so is not hard to envision at all.
Yeah. I mean, see, the thing is, Dan, nobody actually uses it as a currency.
No,
I mean, we all thought that.
I've used it as a currency myself.
Remember when the founder of Overstock, he was on the show, and I really enjoyed him as a guest. He's a big Bitcoin fan, so Overstock was like, it was a huge deal when they said, we're going to accept Bitcoin. You can buy stuff on Overstock.com with Bitcoin, right? And I don't know, I doubt you still can. I'm not sure. But nobody uses it in commerce. It's just like this thing out there that they all trade it for dollars. Like, you look at the Cash App, and the whole point of it is, okay, buy some Bitcoin, but you need dollars to buy anything else. So you're just going to convert it to dollars,
But I think the important thing is that, these are the fat pipes that are put in place and nobody's using them, right? But you put the fat pipes in place, eventually people use them. So I don't worry about that at all. In fact, when I see all this adoption by merchants and services like PayPal, I'm like, fine, trade it, trade it in dollars, do whatever you want to do with it. But one day your trust in the US dollar will begin to fall. And you and I both know that when that sort of thing happens, it can happen so fast that if you're not prepared well ahead of time, it can really catch you off balance. And, so everything is, as I see it, everything is proceeding very well for Bitcoin to become a currency. Lots of people will accept it as a currency right now.
Well, they've had 11 years and nobody's really accepting it now.
Yeah, but what's 11 years in the life of a currency?
I know, but I mean, they started to accept it a little bit, right? Like people bought pizza with it. Now that pizza would be $100 million or some ridiculous.
That first
$20 million pizza. But it's just not used. And the other thing is, I'm surprised you hear so, it's funny. It's like millennial hypocrisy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Millennials are really into it. Okay. They like it because it's a cool technology,
Sure.
but it's super bad for the environment. I mean, mining Bitcoin is terrible for the environment, right? With the electric usage and
I mean, that's if you buy that whole argument that creating electricity in certain ways is bad. I understand that they will make.
Well, electricity would be much better for the environment if it was all nuclear, because that's the best form of electricity, bar none. I mean, it's way better than solar or those spinning guillotines in the sky that kill all the birds and take tons of resources to make.
Yep.
And all kinds of environmental sins are created in making solar panels and windmills. I mean,
solar panels are toxic waste.
Terrible. I know.
It's ridiculous. And
there is one place for solar panels, though, on cars and boats and motorhomes. That's a really good use of solar panels. That's about it.
Sure.
So far.
Affordability is nice. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, we're talking about not using this as a currency. I mean, I can't do that with gold either, really. I know some people will accept, some people would love to accept it, but we have these legal tender laws. But Bitcoin and gold are designed to get around all that. They're stores of value. And frankly, you and I know that, these slips of paper that I have wadded up here in my pocket, this is not this thing that they're in, this silver thing is a better store of value than all this paper right here.
Yeah.
It's just,
Dan, I don't know. I would love to, like I've said a million times, I'd love to be wrong about this, but those wads of paper have aircraft carriers behind them.
Sure. How many aircraft carriers does it take to decrypt all your Bitcoin? You can't.
Well, it's not about decrypting it. It's about the fact that those legal tender laws that support those dollars have a giant global institution with military bases in like 170 countries. I mean, that's what backs the dollar.
And the Bitcoin network is the biggest one in the world of just about any kind associated with that type of a system.
Well, like I said, I want you to be right about this, okay?
Yeah, you really do. You really, really do.
Yeah. Okay, so what else should we cover as we wrap it up here, Dan? Anything more just generally on the economy? What's next? What 2021 is going to look like? And you are an inflationist, right? You believe inflation is definitely here or coming, right?
Eventually, it's inevitable. It is the last resort of every fading republic is to degrade the currency. Absolutely. The mechanism is different than most people understand.
Yeah.
But, sooner or later, they literally sit around thinking, we need to do something. How can we push prices up? And we should take them at their word. It will happen.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Right. Now, inflation is a fantastic business plan for governments and central banks because especially when they're debtor nations like the U.S., right? Because they deflate the value or inflate it away, the value of their debt, whichever way you want to look at it. The debt gets cheaper to repay if there's inflation, right? So that's a very good deal for governments and for central banks. So yeah, they want it. Any thoughts on all this talk about the Great Reset? It's amazing that the elites who run the world, or at least think they run the world, are just completely open about the Great Reset. I mean, it's like they're not even hiding it.
Well, the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. Yeah, I went to the website and read about the Great Reset, and it sounds so, I hope I'm allowed to talk this way, it just sounds so airy-fairy and kind of nebulous. But we all know what it means, right? It's just a bunch of people, like we were talking about, it's a bunch of people telegraphing that they're going to aggregate as much power as they can to change capitalism, right? And we should take them at their word as well, and they will try to do it. But, you and I both know you can regulate and you can change things and you can clamp down on people, but you can't make markets go away, right? That's why drug dealers do make so much money, at least the people at the top. The rest of them don't make anything. But so I'm not telling you I know how the future comes out. You'll never hear me predict. I say don't predict, prepare. And I think the way you prepare is by being truly diversified, certainly as an investor and as a human. You need to hedge all kinds of eventualities. My wife made me, or she didn't make me, she said, I'm buying earthquake bags, which are these backpacks filled with supplies that you might need to strap on if you got to walk out of your house because everything.
The 72-hour bug out bag is what he's talking about.
Bug out, yeah, that's right. Right. So bug out supplies, that's a hedge. And firearms are a hedge, aren't they?
Right.
And the training that goes along with them and entertaining all the scenarios in which you may have to use them. It's the same with finance. I wouldn't, run out and sell all my stocks and bonds, but I want to be truly diversified, meaning have your stocks and bonds and your cash. That's in the financial system. You need it to function, right? But also go outside the financial system. Have your Bitcoin, have your gold and your silver, preferably not just in the country you live in.
Right.
And also, we all know, like you're a real estate guy, we all know something about some asset or some potential store of value that might not be traditional. I heard about a guy who is investing in whiskey in casks in Scotland and making money because
I've seen those deals. Yeah.
Yeah. Dark spirits actually can hold their value over time because, they sit there for 30 years and not everybody is making this or that particular brand. And people do that with wine. They do it with Ferraris. They do it with guitars. If you talk to rich people in Europe who preserved value over centuries, you say, how do you do it? They say a third, and a third. Land, gold, and art. Not stocks, bonds, and cash. Land, gold, and art. And the idea is that you got to figure out how to preserve wealth over time outside the financial system. Yeah. And that's something we need to think about more than ever.
Yeah, and remember, the financial system is low-hanging fruit for the powers that be because they can just come along and say, oh, you know what? All those retirement accounts that have brokerage accounts attached to them or savings accounts, we're just going to nationalize all that. It's been done before, folks, and they can do that with the stroke of a pen. And that's really easy to get to. It's really low-hanging fruit, So give out your website.
investorhour.com or stansberryresearch.com. That's where you can find me.
Good stuff. Dan Ferris, thanks for joining us.
Hey, man, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.